today is sovereignty. God is the sovereign, He is the King, and thought we'd go into some of that. I have 4 pages of notes for you today, and I realized as I closed off the computer and finished it up last night that I left about 4 pages of notes out of it. Oh no! So anyway, this is what you get. So there's plenty on the sovereignty of God. The first thing, it means He's the King, He's the ruler, He's the authority, He's supreme over all things. That's what the word sovereign means. He is top thing. Many of the big hotshot theologian guys who write books on systematic theology say that sovereignty is not actually an attribute of God. It is what, because it's what He does with His attributes more so than an attribute. To me, it's also darn close that it's hard to say if it's an attribute or if it's a function of an attribute. So but just I'd let you know that a lot of them don't think it's an actual attribute, like holiness is an attribute. Sovereignty is more like a function of how He runs things. So there's all kinds of passages on it, and we're going to get to a lot of them. One is Psalm 24. Seven through 10. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. So I just opened up with what is the culmination of my lesson, so I just gave it away. But there's all kinds. 1 Chronicles 29:11 is a good one. 1 Chronicles 29:11. This is what Solomon says on the day. No, this is what David says as he's setting aside his offerings and his wealth to be put into the temple. And it says, so David blessed the Lord in sight of all the assembly, and he said, Blessed are you, O Lord God of Israel, our Father, forever and ever. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness, and the power, and the glory, and the victory, and the majesty. Indeed, everything that is in the heavens and the earth, yours is the dominion. O Lord, you exalt yourself as head over it all. Well, that's pretty direct as sovereignty. That's what David said near the end of his life there. As owner and creator, he has absolute right to rule over everything. He created it. He has the rights of ownership. When you make a thing, you own it. When you invent a thing, you have the rights to the profits that it produces. When you do anything, when you write a book, you get the rights to the royalties. Yes. So the person who creates is the owner of the thing. So that is another reason why God is the owner, creator of the universe. He has the absolute right to do anything He wants to with it. He has the power to exercise. And here's the other thing. He has the power to exercise His authority. It just reminds me of the UN. It has all the authority. It has no power to do any of it. It could look at Russia and say, no, you cannot invade Ukraine, and what will Russia do? So what are you going to do, So that's authority without power. If you don't have power to match your authority. If you have power without authority, you have anarchy. If you have authority without power, you have nothing. You just have somebody talking. You need both for it to work. So the fact that we needed to learn omnipotence before we learned sovereignty. I tried to put these actually in a logical pattern of what should we learn first, even though they all work together like that. So he has absolute authority, and it says that, just like the potter over the clay. The clay can't say to the potter, I really, really wanted to be a cup and you made me a plate. I'm just annoyed with you. The cup, the clay has no right to say what he's actually blessed to be made into anything. He could be left as a pile of clay sitting there, I have a pile of clay that has been unattended at my house for quite a long time, and it's sitting there going, when are you going to make something out of me? Well, not yet. So he has power over the clay. Isaiah 45, 5 through 7 is a good one. As a matter of fact, Isaiah has all kinds of things to say about God's sovereignty. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Beside me there is no God. I will gird you, though you have not known me, that men may know from the rising to the setting of the sun that there is no one besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other, the one forming light and creating darkness, causing well-being, creating calamity. I am the Lord who does all these things. It's just all him. And so that's pretty cool. He is free to do whatever he wants. That's part of sovereignty. Part of sovereignty includes his free will. Oops, I guess we need an R in there. Sovereignty includes his free will. He has freedom to do anything he wants. The really cool thing is that everything he wants to do is defined by who he is. So we needed to know he was good, because otherwise you would be afraid of sovereignty, because he could do anything he wanted. We needed to know that he was good. And when we see crisis happening, we need to know that he's good and that he has a plan here and it's working out. If you lived in Ukraine, you would need to know God is good. You would need to know that. And you may not understand how the two things connect, but if you could believe that, you could at least have a little bit of comfort for your soul. So, same thing happens to us on smaller levels. You're on your way, you gotta get to some place, and you need to be there by 3 o'clock, and you get a flat tire, and you need to know, because you feel like this isn't good. You gotta trust that God has something good. So you can apply that all through your life, all through the day. When you cut yourself while you're slicing tomatoes, just everything can be like that. He can do anything he wants. Psalm 115:3. But our God is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. That's pretty direct. Our God is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. You realize that he was not required to do anything. He did not have anything that said, you need to create something. He didn't have that. He wasn't lonely. He wasn't in need of companionship. He wasn't bored. He wasn't, there wasn't a plan that he was failing to live up to. He didn't have to do anything, which is the biggest question. It was why, because it cost him so much to do what he did. It cost him everything to do what he did. But so we're going to get into a lot of that. So I'm just sort of laying groundwork of who he is and what he is, okay? So he also does, everything he does is freely done. This will be a good discussion when we get to heaven. God, sit here and tell me about you. And he'll probably say, did you open the book? Worthy are you, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and because of your will they existed and were created. Wow. Sometimes when I'm going through this and I read 100 different verses on this same topic, all of a sudden the wonder of who God is overwhelms me. If I read one verse here and then run on to the rest of my day because I have 30 seconds for a verse, and I run on to it does not overwhelm me. I have to say I almost always forget it. But if I sit down and it's like, oh my goodness, I probably went through 100 verses on the sovereignty of God, and I maybe hit 10% of what's in the Bible, and it was like, whoa, how much He does for us. So He does whatever He wishes. He wasn't required to do anything. Oh, the one I just read, Revelation 4:11. He doesn't do anything arbitrarily. He doesn't make any emotional decisions, reactive decisions, like we do. He always has reasons, even if we don't understand those reasons. I mean, there was one time the disciples are asking Jesus, what are you doing? And He goes, well, you don't understand this now, you will understand it later. And there's reasons that we don't understand. And we don't think like God. We don't, remember, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are His thoughts higher than our thoughts, and His ways higher than. I always go back to that when I cannot understand what He's doing, when I can't understand the details of my life. I have to trust that He knows what He's doing, and that He has smarter thoughts than me. So He is working out His eternal plans which He purposed in Christ Jesus. He actually says it like that. I think that's 1 Timothy 1:9 or 2 Timothy 1:9. So in a little bit here, I'm just going to overwhelm you with the verses. I kind of think that's good. Who saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to His own purpose and grace, which He granted us in Christ Jesus from all eternity. Wow. From all eternity, that was His plan for us. His decisions will not change, which is something we will have to cover when we get to immutability, but His decisions will not change. Isaiah 14:24. Surely the Lord of hosts has sworn, saying, surely just as I have intended, so it has happened, and just as I have planned, so it will stand. That's pretty cool. 27 says, for the Lord of hosts has planned, who can frustrate it? And as for His stretched out hand, who can turn it back? That was kind of neat. 44:6 and 7. Isaiah 44:6 and 7. Thus says the Lord, the King of Israel, and His Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first, and I am the last. There is no God besides me. Who is like me? Let him proclaim and declare it. Yes, let him recount it to me in order. From the time that I established the ancient nation, and let them declare to them and the things that are coming and the events that are going to take place. Okay. So His decisions do not change. His throne is from everlasting. You've probably heard that a lot of times. Psalm 93 tells us that one. The Lord reigns. He is clothed with majesty. The Lord has clothed and girded himself with strength. Indeed, the world is firmly established, and it will not be moved. Your throne is everlasting from of old, and you are from everlasting. So that's a little bit on sovereignty. There's more. It's all totally in line with his character. Everything he does is based on his holiness, his righteousness, his justice. We have that in Isaiah 41:4. Who has performed and accomplished it, calling forth the generations from the beginning? I am the Lord, the first, and with the last I am he. I thought that had holiness in it, but it doesn't. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, here's a really good one. Ephesians 1. You guys ever studied Ephesians chapter 1? That would take a year. 9 through 11. He made known to us the mystery of his will, according to his kind intention, which he purposed in him, with a view to the administration suitable to the fullness of times, that is, the summing up of all things in Christ, things in heaven and things on earth. In him we also have obtained an inheritance, having been predestined according to the his purpose, who works all things after the counsel of his will. Okay, so those three verses are so loaded with information that it would take a long time to sort that out. But you did get that he does it by his kind intention, and you did get it that everything is happening according to the counsel of his will. Okay, so his decisions are before creation. He made his plans before he created anything, just as wisdom was before creation. There is nothing he has not foreseen, and there is nothing that he has not planned. Now that creates all kinds of questions, because that should just go wait. So we'll get to some of that, but and I can't answer all these questions. I actually sat and had quite some conversations with God, asking him how come I can't find the answers to these questions. But so we will just have to leave it that he decided not to tell Debbie the answer to the questions. But so here's the name, his name, that is mighty, powerful, sovereign, king, overall, highest, most high. It's El Elyon, and it looks like, I gotta look at this one. Okay, so this is a silent letter. So this is your E, and here's your L, and this is the other silent letter. So this is another E, and here's an L, and this makes a Y. That's that little thing right there. Mm-hmm. That's a Y. This is an O, and this is an N. They have two N's, one that you use at the end of a word and one that you use in the middle of a word, but that's so it goes L, Yon, and it means God Most High. See this repeat right there? That's what that is. That's what God Most High. It's used a lot of places. I only told you a few. It was used in Genesis, I left this in there on your notes, it's used in Genesis 14:20 when God delivers Abraham from his enemies. It is God the Most High, the Redeemer of Israel. That's in Psalm 78:35. But I think I'm going to tell you a story that you probably all know. But this is about a man who had to learn that God was Most High. And it starts off, he's king, and it starts off, he has this dream, and he can't figure out the dream, and he brings all his soothsayers and magicians and everybody in, and nobody can figure out the dream, and so he says, kill them all. Well, it turns out that Daniel is one of them all. He's down on the lower probably ranks of the things, and he wasn't brought in, and so the guard goes to the door, and Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they're all staying in their little apartment, and they knock on the door, and you could almost just feel the guard going, I have been ordered to kill you, and I don't want to kill you. And Daniel goes, okay, and he's very respectful. Can you just wait till tomorrow? He goes, all right. So they spend the night in prayer, and God tells Daniel the dream. Now here's what made it so hard for all the other guys, is that the king, who is Nebuchadnezzar, wouldn't tell his magicians what the dream was, let alone let them interpret. Say, I had this really bad dream. You tell me what it is and tell me what it means. And they go, Sir, King, Royal, Sovereign, I'm sorry, but nobody can do that. And so here Daniel goes in there and tells them the dream, and tells him the dream and what it means. And here in the dream, he's this big statue, and he's the head. I mean, he's the head of gold. He's not the arms and shoulders of silver, or the body of bronze, or the legs of clay. I might have some of that mixed up, but he's the head of gold. So, whoa, he likes this dream, you know. And of course, God is actually laying out the plan of history to the future, what's going on. But so at the end of that, let's get to Daniel. I want you to see Nebuchadnezzar's reaction. So it's going to come up with this name. So in chapter 2, verse 47, at the end of it, Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did homage to Daniel, and gave orders to present him an offering and a fragrance incense. And the king answered Daniel and said, surely your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of lords, and a revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery. So he knows. He doesn't acknowledge him as his own God. He says, your God is like that? See, Nebuchadnezzar believes in lots of gods, and that one's really smart. I mean, he knows how to figure out dreams. So he's like, so Daniel gets promoted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get promoted, and some time goes by, and I don't know, this is my presumption, but maybe Nebuchadnezzar keeps thinking about that wonderful golden head. Because by chapter 3, he builds a whole golden statue. And it doesn't say that it's of himself, but it just really gives that impression that it might be of himself. And this thing is huge. I mean, the volume of gold in that statue is, you probably have all kinds of hungry people wishing that they had a little speck of that gold out of that. So, and then he makes this order, everybody's got to bow down to that. And obviously Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego won't do it, right? So they get confronted. Nebuchadnezzar gets really mad. He gets furious. You got to throw him into the fire. He brings the fire up 7 times. It's hot, and he throws him in. And of course, God appears in the fire and saves them. And they come out not. I mean, the soldiers who throw them in die from the fire. they are sacrificed just to toss them in. It is that hot. So the ability of them to survive this fire is impossible. And then he looks and he goes, we threw in 3, but I see 4, and the 4th one looks like the son of the gods. And he doesn't know how to describe it, so he calls him the son of the gods. And oh yeah, he probably is the son of the God, yes. And then he says at the end of chapter 3, 28 and 29, Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel to deliver his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielding up their bodies so as to not serve or worship any god except their own God. And then he makes a decree that says that no one is allowed to insult their God. So twice now, he's learned that he is not top God, right? Top king, he's not. He's a slow learner. So, some time goes by, and Daniel is it has been promoted to higher ranking now. He's no longer a young whippersnapper magician. That's what they called him back then. He's one of the higher ones, and Nebuchadnezzar has another dream. And this dream really disturbs him, and he brings all his people in, and nobody can tell him. This time he tells them the dream. Nobody can tell him what the dream means, and finally they bring in Daniel, and my thought is, why didn't you bring in Daniel at the beginning? But, I don't know. And at the end, chapter 4 is written by Nebuchadnezzar, and it's his recounting of what happened to him. And as he opens it up with his final punchline, and he opens it up with the ending of the story, then goes back and retells the story, right? So he opens it up and he says, Nebuchadnezzar, the king to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language that live on the earth. He is running the world power at the moment, with probably the exception of the Far East, because they don't even know they exist hardly yet, but yeah. May your peace abound. It seemed good to me to declare the signs and wonders which the Most High God has done for me. Now that is that. Actually, it's a slight variation of this, but it's very close. It's like, if you look through, how I put the numbers on there from Strong's Concordance that has all the numbers listed? Okay, it's like 2 numbers off, so it's a very close variation of this word. So they take the word and then they use different variations of it. So it says, how great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. And then he's going to tell the story of how he figured this out. So he's doing great. He's got Babylon is at the peak of its power, and it has conquered Assyria. It is Egypt is a vassal. Jerusalem and all that is all gone. They're all in captivity to Nebuchadnezzar. He is the big guy. He's probably gone further east into Iran and Iraq area, and he's just massive. Okay, that's his kingdom, and he's head honcho of the whole darn thing. And he knows it and loves his position. Okay? So he gets this dream. And he can't figure out what the dream is. And he dreams that there's this great big tree. And this tree is filled with fruits, and all the birds nest in the tree, and all the animals of the world live under the tree, and everything is just great. Everything is about this tree. And then he hears this angelic watcher come and tell him, chop down that tree, but leave the stump. We're going to leave the roots. We're going to leave the stump, chop down. Well, this is a nightmare to him. He does not like this dream, and he can't figure out what it means. He finally brings in Daniel. He tells Daniel the dream, and Daniel goes, I sure wish it could happen to one of your enemies and not you. Oh, that's not the great, I mean, if someone was telling them, I mean, what a way to introduce that answer. So he says, he tells them that he thinks he is sovereign over the universe. He has put himself one notch too high. And Daniel gives him some suggestions. And he says, it would be good if maybe you would humble yourself a little. This is me interpreting the passage a little bit. And he does it very respectfully. And I appreciate how Daniel has concern for this rather bombastic, arrogant king. And yet he treats him with respect and concern for him personally. And that's a lot of character in that man, Daniel. So, but Nebuchadnezzar doesn't listen. And a year later, we're at about 24 and 25. A year later, here's the interpretation of the king. Wait a minute, here it says, this is what Daniel said. Oh, chop down the tree and destroy it, yet leave the stump with its roots in the ground, but with a band of iron and bronze around it, in the new grass of the field, and let him, this is the tree now called a him, be drenched with dew of heaven, and let him share with the beasts of the field until 7 periods have passed over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree from the Most High, which has come upon the Lord my king. All right. That you will be driven out from mankind, and your dwelling place will be with the beasts of the field, and you will be given grass to eat like cattle, and drenched with the dew of heaven, until 7 periods of time will pass over you, until you recognize that the Most High is the ruler over the realm of mankind, and bestows it on whomever he wishes. Okay. Therefore, and then he said, and in that the commandment to leave the stump and the roots, your kingdom will be assured to you after you recognize that it is heaven that rules. Therefore, O king, may my advice be pleasing to you. Break away now from your sins by doing righteousness, and from your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor, in case there may be some prolonging of your prosperity. But no. So 12 months later, the king is out on the roof of his royal palace. So you can picture all the, you've seen those pictures of the 7 wonders of the world, and there's Babylon with the beautiful hanging gardens and all this. Okay, there's King Nebuchadnezzar standing on top of that. I know none of them exist. You have to just deal with drawings of people, but you get the idea. And he says, 12 months later, he's walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, and the king reflected and said, is this not Babylon the Great, which I myself have built as a royal residence by the might of my power and for the glory of my majesty? Ooh, not a good thing. While the word was still in the king's mouth, the voice came from heaven saying, Nebuchadnezzar, to you is declared, sovereignty has been removed from you. So, he gets driven out. There's an actual, medical people have tried to come up with an actual medical condition for this, where you actually lose your mind and you become like a bovine. And it's some title like that, something or other. That's a medical condition where you actually act like a cow. He goes out for 7 years. He lives in the field. He's on hands and knees. He munches the grass. He chews his cud. He lives like that. This is the king of all kings, right? And his hair grows like eagle feathers, and his nails become like claws. And he loses his mind. And that's what the God of heaven can do to humble a person. Take warning to myself whenever I feel like I think I'm something, you know? And after 7 years, this is Nebuchadnezzar writing, verse 34. But at the end of that period, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my reason returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing, but he does according to his will in the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and no one can ward off his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At that time my reason returned to me, and my majesty and splendor were restored to me for the glory of my kingdom, and my counselors and my nobles began seeking me out. So I was established in my sovereignty, and surpassing greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt the King of heaven. For all his works are true, and his ways are just, and he is able to humble those who walk in pride. So yeah, that's a story of who is king. That's what king is like. So I thought that was pretty cool. When you take sovereignty and you try to work it out as to how God uses his sovereignty, they have come up with, I'm going to say they, meaning all these guys that I've been studying from, have come up with 2 ways, there's more than that, but 2 ways that they separate sovereignty out. So you have preservation, and you have providence. If you've read very much of our history of our founding fathers, they talk about the providence of God all the time. And it's not real common to us anymore to talk about the providence of God. As a matter of fact, I had to look it up to make sure I knew exactly what the providence of God was. But the preservation is God using his sovereignty plus his omnipotence. This is my, OMPOT is my abbreviation for omnipotence when I'm taking notes. So that's why I started to write up there. So, omnipotence. Maintaining everything for us. So he has made decisions to maintain everything for us. He did not, it is not inherent in matter to self-sustain itself. Like when you have a plant and it has little seeds, and you plant the little seeds and the little seeds grow, yes, it is inherent in the seeds to grow, but each of those is grown by the sovereignty of God. He decides they grow. I've planted a lot of seeds that didn't grow, and so that is not something, he did not create the universe to self-sustain itself. That's the concept of evolution. Okay, so each thing is sustained by God. So when plants grow, that's because God is causing that plant to grow. When all those things, and you start to think about that, and you go, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming. If every little thing, if every day gravity exists because he makes gravity exist, then that is what you call intimate working with his creation. Intimately being involved with every single little thing that happens. And you turn heat on the water and it boils. That's because God has created those elements to do that. I've been looking at water lately and it just blows my mind. Water solves so many problems. It cleans up so much dirt. One time I had a little tray under my stove on my burner. Well, it was in serious black condition. And it had so much pile up that I was ready to say, all right, I'm going to throw this out and just go buy new ones. And I ended up sticking it in the sink or in a bowl and letting it set for like 4 days. I come back 4 days later and 90% of that was gone. Just water. I didn't put anything in it. I didn't put soap in it. I didn't cover it with soda and baking soda and vinegar, all those things that take that junk off. I just put it, I go, God, your water is amazing. So I have a clean tray under my thing simply from water. Anyway, all that stuff that he does is constantly done by his sovereign decision to uphold the universe. It's actively involved. It's not just, because there's a lot of theories about like theism and different things that God just starts it and says, okay, there you go, I'm busy, and moves off, and he's intimately involved in every little thing. I kind of wish less weeds would grow, but you know, yeah. So he's intimately involved in each one. He made all things together with their properties and their powers. The idea that everything continues on its own is not true. Matter does not have within itself its own cause for existence or its own cause for self-sustaining. No force is self-maintaining. If there was a force that was self-maintaining, you would have a perpetual motion thing. And if you could actually harness perpetual, I've seen a little perpetual motion machine where the water does this, you know, and it keeps going forever. If that wasn't for gravity, that wouldn't work. Right? So there isn't really a perpetual motion. That's just harnessing the movement of water. There really isn't. There is no the earth does not keep turning just because it keeps turning by itself. God does that constantly. That's what we found out when he stopped it, you know. So I thought that was neat. Jesus Christ is the agent of preservation. Okay? He, that is in Colossians 1:17. He holds up all things by the word of his power. I think that's in Hebrews 1:3, but let me see what Colossians 1:17 says. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Hebrews 1:3. I like Hebrews. He is the radiance of his glory and the exact representation of his nature, and he upholds all things by the word of his power. We know that that's Jesus Christ because when he had made purification from sin, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. So it's Jesus Christ who maintains this. Now you stop and think about that baby in the manger and the fact that the world did not fall apart because he was busy being a baby. That's kind of mind-blowing. Think about the time when he's on the cross and he's busy carrying the sins of the world, which is so much that God the Father has to look away and he blacks out the universe right there. And yet, that cross did not go flying out of the ground because gravity stopped. I don't know, it's kind of mind-blowing to me how the combination of his humanity and his deity and how he did that. If that's not God, then there is no such thing as God. So he's the agent of all things. It tells us that he's the agent of keeping man and beast. That's in Psalm 36:6. He's the agent of life and death, of breath. That's Psalm 104:29. He keeps us. That's Psalm 66:9. Acts tells us that in him we move and exist and breathe. Remember that? That's Acts 17:28. And he preserves his saints. That was in Proverbs 2:8, Psalm 37, John 10:28, where he holds us in his hand and we can't get out. One time when my daughter was teaching a Bible class to little kids, she said she had them take a piece of, a black ink, marks-a-lot little thing, and put a dot on their hand. And they said, this is you, this is God's hand, and he's got it like this. I said, now try to get the dot out of the hand. And the kids are going, nope, can't get the dot out of the hand. This is just a cute teaching thing that sticks in my mind with that verse every time I hear it. Okay, providence. Providence is how, by definition, how God's sovereignty plans for time and how it works out in successive things. So providence plans things like that. Here's the technical definition: the continuous activity of God whereby he makes all the events of the physical, mental, and moral realms work out for his purposes, which is his original design and creation. Evil is not allowed to thwart God's original design. His design is benevolent, wise, holy, and that's his purpose. And that's by Thiessen. Providence, he is rational as he uses his sovereignty. He is rational because he is wise. So decisions make sense. He has the best interests of his creatures at heart because he is good. He has the ability to accomplish his purposes because he is omnipotent. His laws are moral and right when he gives us laws to obey and establish laws, because he is justice and righteousness and holy. I was reading C.S. Lewis, and he had in Mere Christianity, and his opening section was, how do we know that there even is a God? And it was the fact that men know the difference between moral good and bad is proof that there's God. Animals do not know the difference between moral good and bad. They know survival, what they like. My cat knows when he likes, when he wants to come in, when he wants to go out, and he cries when he doesn't get his way, and whatnot. But he has no idea. As a matter of fact, the other day, the light was shining on the window of the sliding glass door, and he's trying to attack the cat in the reflection, you know. We were talking about how smart the cat was. Yeah, so they have, so the very fact that we understand moral good and evil is proof for God, because that does not exist, and that can't be in evolution. How could that happen in evolution? That's a concept that can't happen. He rules over the nature. I'm really still trying to overwhelm you with sovereignty. He rules over the sun, the rain, the hail, the ice, earthquakes, the ground, and I left half of it out. And there's verses for every one of these. It's all over how he brings the hail, and he sets the sun, and the sun rises, and and all that. So you can just read the whole Bible, you'll find them all. He rules over the nations. Psalm 22:28 says that. Psalm 47, 7 and 8, he increases and destroys them. Actually says that. Psalm 33, 10 through 11, he observes them and judges them. Psalm 66, 7, he establishes and dethrones rulers, as we just saw with Nebuchadnezzar. Right? He sets national boundaries, which is making me have all kinds of questions with current history, current events. Okay, he sets national boundaries. That's in Acts 17:26. He uses nations and their rulers to exercise his own will. There's one of those where in Isaiah 45, he talks, I mentioned this last time, he talks about Cyrus the Great. So he talks about Cyrus the Great 150 years before Cyrus the Great existed. And he is going to talk about how he is going to bring Israel back into the country, back to Jerusalem. So he uses rulers to accomplish his will. They have no authority except from God, all the rulers, whether we like them or not. That is in Romans 13:1. And when Paul wrote that, probably Nero was the ruler. So there are no rulers except for ones established by God. So he uses the good and the evil. He has sovereign control over our lives. He knows what we're like before we're born. That's in Psalm 139, 16 and Jeremiah 1:5. He had Jeremiah's story planned before he was born. And Jeremiah had a lot of questions about God's story for him. It wasn't an exciting, fun life. He had difficulties. His whole life was difficulties. Jeremiah had, as far as I can tell, Jeremiah had 2 people who listened to him mentioned. Except for maybe Daniel and his guys listened to him. One was his assistant Barak, and the other guy is a guy named, it's a 2-part name. He's a servant in the palace that rescues Jeremiah from the pit by tying a bunch of rags together and drops it. Something Ebed, but I would have to look that up. He takes a bunch of rags, he ties them together. Jeremiah's been thrown into a pit, and he's dying down there. And this guy he sinks in there, and he ties these, makes a rope. You would think he could find a rope. Ties these rags together, and he wraps them around his waist, and he pulls this. It pretty much risked his life to save Jeremiah. 2 guys. Yeah. If you would say, wow, he had a successful ministry, huh? And yet he did. Yeah. So he works out his purposes in our lives. Esther is a perfect example. Maybe you were born for such a day as this. Right? Yeah. It says that he does this whether we recognize it or not. Because when he was talking about Cyrus the Great, it was at a time when Cyrus didn't know who he was. And he still did it. I mean, he says in there, even though you don't know who I am. So that's pretty cool. He provides for our needs. He provides for our safety. He determines the time and circumstances of our death. Our successes, promotions. He promotes us, demotes us, gives us successes, and gives us failures. He makes rich and poor. He gives and withholds sleep. He is involved in our very thinking process. And that's in Proverbs 21:1, where it says he turns the mind of the king whichever way he wants. Okay? He even cares about the trivial. And he knows about the sparrow. He knows how many hairs fell out of my hair today in the shower. He knows how the lot falls. So when they're throwing the dice, he knows how that's going to turn out. He cares for the needs of his people. He cares for his own. That's 1 Peter 5:7. He gives safety. He protects. He provides good. He sustains. He supplies our needs. In general, makes all things work together for good to those who love him. The more we understand, and we're going to get into more, but the more we understand how God uses his sovereignty, the easier it is to trust during times you don't understand. It really is. If you had no concept that he could do all these, that's why I gave you this. If you want all these verses, I've got verses on every single one that he does, that he's trying to say, you can trust me, I know what I'm doing, I got a big plan, it's a good plan, it's got all kinds of stuff in it, it deals with evil, I've got your best at heart, you can trust me. So, that's God's sovereignty as an introduction. You can take it ready. So let's get
Word picture that was helpful.
on here. So one of the things was, what is God's big purpose? And there's several big purposes, but I'm going to go down to two of them. One of them is the happiness of his creatures. But that's not his primary purpose. But the happiness of his creatures is a big purpose for God. That's why he's good, he's benevolent, he's kind, he's love. We're going to get it. That's next week is the favorite one. You know, what God is the favorite one. But this was the very first challenge that was made, because Satan said to Eve, he implied, God doesn't want to have your best interest at heart, which is why he won't let you eat from that tree. You know, and so, and Satan has been doing that ever since. Like, how many teenagers have to, or all of us as teenagers, had to consider the thought where he said, wait until you're married. And you go, is that my best? I mean, how many, can you believe that? How many of you think, no, that's not the best? I don't want to wait till why would I wait till I'm married? We could have fun right now.
Why did he give me these feelings if
Yes,
if
and
I wanted to
so,
get away?
right. So why do I have to wait till I'm married? And actually, God knows what he's talking about. He really, really does. But that temptation is constant, right? And that's just the one that came to my mind. I'm sure there's all kinds of other ones, but that one came to my mind. Why do we have to wait? There's a lot of things that says that he sends the rain on the just and the unjust.
Say it again, Debbie.
He sends the rain on the just and the unjust. You know, I mean, that would be like wanting best for his creation. He gives food and gladness. He satisfies us with food and gladness. That's in Acts 14:17. In Romans, it said that his goodness is purposed to lead us to repentance. So that's cool.
What verse is that?
That's Romans 2:4. Psalm 84:11. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly. He came to regenerate and sanctify men. That's got Jesus' purpose. He came to save us. That's for our good. So, however, there's an argument against this. If God's happiness, if our happiness was God's ultimate plan for his sovereignty, why did he permit sin? That's a good question. Okay, so that's one we're going to leave hanging there for a minute, because that was like, I had some big questions for God, and I don't know that I have satisfactory, oh, that's it, you know, those kind of answers. I really just don't know. I'm telling you honestly, I don't know that. But his primary purpose in what he's doing with his sovereignty is not all of that. His primary purpose is that's his primary purpose, is his glory. The heavens are telling the glory of God. Their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. That's Psalm 19:1. So the primary purpose is His glory. There's all kinds of things on that. Let's see, I've got a whole bunch of verses on this. He does this as holiness and righteousness, shows His hatred of sin. His power shows us creation, preservation, providence, and redemption. His wisdom of how it all happens. I don't have those yet. Yeah. His truth. There was just like they're all over the place. So, His truth, the laws of nature, His thinking. He's faithful to His promises, the Word of God, and He delays judgment for His purposes. And so there's all kinds of things here, which is foreordained. So I thought we better hit, how did He make these decisions? So this is called the divine decrees. Decrees are just His decisions. Actually, it's a singular. It's one big, huge, giant decree. I can't think of it as a singular because there's too many aspects to it. But remember, God thinks of everything as a simultaneous whole. So He makes this plan, and His sovereignty has the authority to carry it out. And I have to break it down into steps because I can't think like that, and I think logically or progressively. So there's this, and there's all kinds of different opinions on this. If you've seen these before, this is called, technically this is called Lapsarianism. Anybody, I know you've heard that. Anybody else heard of Lapsarianism? All right, there's supralapsarianism, there's infralapsarianism, there's sublapsarianism. I'm just going to, and some of them I don't think are right, and some of them I think, but there are lots of opinions. So I'm going to give you my best guess, okay? And I'll tell you, this is the difference between Calvinism and Arminianism. This is the big issue right here. And one of them says, well, let me tell you what I think is the best I can do, and then I'll tell you what they are. So here's his, I'm sure there's a lot of things that he thought, but if I'm thinking just in the realm of man, we're going to say he decided to create man. Okay, we got that one. He did the whole world for this, and he created man. He decided to give man free will. Now that's a huge decision. In doing that, because he's omniscient, and because he knows what man's going to do, because he knows everything about it, he knows that because evil exists already at this time, or, excuse me, not at this time, he has no time, at whatever, okay, he knows man is going to fall. And sin is going to enter the world. So this decision has to take into account this decision. So one of the big questions at the end is going to be, why that decision?
So
Why?
he already knew this when he created man. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I know they're going to fall.
Oh yeah,
I'm not going to be surprised.
yeah, he's not surprised, nothing surprised. He creates man, he's going to give man free will. He knows man's going to use his free will negatively. He knows that's going to create a sin nature in all of us. And we are going to be born with the desire to disobey God. We're going to be born with the desire to go our own way constantly. I mean, what do little kids do? They prove it. They prove the case. All you have to have is a 2-year-old or younger, and they prove the case. You have to teach them yes. You don't have to teach them no. You have to teach them to share. You don't have to teach them to be selfish. Right? All that stuff. That's in nature in us. And thankfully, we can teach them, and God can teach us. But that's it. Well, this is a big decision as to this, okay? He does that. He knows that evil is going to influence, and included in this, he chooses to not stop that. Now that's another question. I said, okay, God, why didn't you choose to stop that? So obviously my little puny brain is not thinking like God thinks, because he still is good, he still is holy, he still has a plan, and yet he gave us free will. Now that's something we really value. You value your ability to make decisions. You value your ability to have your own opinion on a thing, or your favorites, or something you like, and you don't want to eat okra, you know? I mean, that's just on my list. I really don't want to eat it.
You just haven't had it prepared right.
I've had it prepared lots of ways. It just never gets over the slimy. I can't handle it. My husband loved okra. See, I know, I had to deal with okra. So my free will says no to okra. Yeah. So there's that. Okay, and then so as he does this, but God is fair in this. Watch, he gives him a choice. He gives him a warning. And at the same time, he also pronounces a judgment. So we see free will, we see God's goodness in the warning, we see justice in the judgment, because you cannot let that go, because God is holy. So you can start to see his character, his attributes functioning in this story. So much in the Adam and Eve story. How many of you guys have read that story 100 times? How many of you? Yeah. You know what? There's so much we don't know about the Adam and Eve story. It's just overwhelming. The whole basis of the whole Bible is set up in those 3 verses, 3 chapters, and what's going to happen. So then he makes man responsible for his decisions. Yes.
What are you talking about?
What am I talking about?
That Adventist or something? What did you say?
Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve.
Oh, Adam and Eve.
Excuse me, I'm on the. No. I'm looking at the clock and I'm going, I got a lot to go, I better talk fast. So he also makes, because there's a judgment, he makes man responsible for his decision. Does God know what that decision is? Has God already planned everything related to that decision? Yes. Okay? Some theologians even say that God ordained the negative decision. I'm going, okay, I'm sorry, my brain is not quite comprehending, but, and maybe that's true. Okay, so there's that. He also gives man a conscience. To help him deal with this. Okay, so that it just gives man free will. It's just point 2, but there's just a lot impacted in that. Just like when you say create man, well, that's not just like just create man. You got to have the universe. You got to have the sun. You got to have gravity. You got to have food. You got to have air. You got to have everything there just to get that one done. So there's a whole lot to this one. There's probably a lot more to this one that's not here on my list. Okay, he decreed to provide redemption. That's a huge decree. and how that plays out. And the first promise of that is Genesis 3:15, when God says that to the serpent, you will bruise his heel, but he's going to crush your head. This is, he also, he permits Satan to influence. There's all kinds of things going on here. So he took the initiative. So before the thing starts, he's going to do this. Before this has been decided. So it's all in that plan. Where he takes the initiative in Jesus. It even says in Psalm 2:7 that he is going to plan that out. Surely I will tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you are my son, today I have begotten you. That is a promise of the coming of Jesus and the decree to do it. That's Psalm 2:7. Jesus will, when he comes, he will constantly do the Father's will. So this goes back to his knowledge of sovereignty. This is, I'm talking about him as a human, because I only have certain kind of human language, but Jesus knows God's will all the way through, and he is doing it throughout his life. He even gets down to the roughest, hardest part, and he asks God, was there another way? And if there is, can we do it? And if there was, those angels, how many legions were there going to come down and rescue him right at that moment? 12 legions, yeah. And that's some huge number. And there wasn't. This is in the decrees. This is the decision made from the beginning. And I imagine that God the Son says, okay, I'll do it. This is me trying to describe a moment that is all conclusive at one point, but they're having this conversation, let's say, in eternity past, and the Holy Spirit goes, hey, I got this idea. God says, oh, that's a good plan. Jesus says, I'll do it. That's silly, but you get it, right? Knowing what that would cost. So, knowing that it's going to cost this, he gives that. That makes this really valuable. When God takes the judgment and puts it on Jesus, he has to remain just in doing it. He has to, if you are to send someone to jail who's innocent, that's not justice. God has to remain just in doing it. So that's a big question that I asked. How did that happen? And justice stay fair within yourself? That's a big question. See, I'm going to just leave you with all these big questions. All right, so he had to stay fair in doing it. This is this huge demonstration of love. Now, one of the things that is an opinion, but you might ask, why did God allow sin, permit the fall? He could have created man and not allowed the fall. He could have done that. He could have even given free will to man, stopped this, and never allowed the fall. He could have done that. So the big question is, it would have saved this. He would not have had to give his most precious thing, his son. So why not? Why?
Are we able to love without free will?
See, I was going to, you just about stole my, I'm sorry, you just about stole my punchline.
You said free will. Sorry.
If we were living like this, without the fall, we could understand sovereignty, we could understand holy, we could understand justice and good and omnipotence and knowledge and all, and we might have a glimpse of love, but we would never understand it like we do now. And to that extent, our glory of God would be diminished. I mean, you get a glimpse of this, and you drop in awe at what God has done. And we're only on number 3, you know? Okay, so the next one is the tricky one. Here's a few more things. This is for all. Whether they respond or not. Now that, would you sacrifice your child for someone who will never acknowledge it? I couldn't. A lot of people never acknowledge this. And yet, Stalin's sins were paid for. Nero's sins were paid for. That takes love to a dimension beyond what I can imagine. So that's for all. So this is called unlimited atonement. And it is found in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but will have eternal life. It's also found in 1 John 2:2. And he is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the entire world. It's in 1 Timothy 2:6. Who gave himself as a ransom for all, a testimony given at the proper time. So there's also 4:10, 1 Timothy 4:10, and Titus 2:11, and there's probably others, but those are the ones I found. Okay, so that's unlimited atonement. All right, number 4, and this one is a really tricky one, and I don't necessarily get it. So he decreed to save, and the technical term is the elect. So now the question is, who is the elect? Are the elect those who use their free will to believe this, and it just stands like that? Are the elect previously chosen by God, and they believe because they're chosen? So here's your 2 options. You are chosen because you have believed. You believe because you have been chosen. So if you, depending on which way you take on this one, you stand on Calvinism or you stand on Arminianism, and I'm going to say, I don't know where I stand. I don't know how to resolve the 2, because there are tons of verses on this side, and there are tons of verses on this side, and I look at them all, and you just straight up read them, and you go, oh, that one's right. No. Next day, oh, that one's right. Next day, no, that one's right. You know, so I'm going to leave it. I don't know how to tell you which one it is. Okay? So that is, I know which way I kind of feel, but I can't just tell you that that's right. There are all kinds of verses on all that, and all you have to do is read Romans 9, 10, and 11, and you'll get one whole side. You read other passages, you get other sides of this story. So that's that one. And then here's the last one. He decreed to send the Holy Spirit to facilitate, or let's see, what is the word for it? To bring about faith in Christ. And that one I get. You could say, God, you could have an open like interest wanting to, and you can't pull off the faith. I understand that. It says in Ephesians 2, 8 and 9, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and even that faith is not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast about their own faith. So I see that. I see that the Holy Spirit makes that possible. I see that, but there still has to be a free will decision in here. Otherwise, God would not be fair in sending those who don't believe to hell. Because you're responsible for your decisions. So, right? So now we've gotten into this area where sovereignty is really smart, and I'm not. And I can't figure out these details. So, have I just messed with all your brains? You want to see some of the other viewpoints? I'll show them to you here. They're interesting. One viewpoint, and I think this is the Calvinistic viewpoint. First thing God decided to do, save some and reprobate others.
Retrobate.
That's the technical, in other words, let them,
Deny.
okay?
Yeah.
All right? 2, create both. 3, permit the fall of both. 4, redeem the saved. And send the Holy Spirit to cause that to happen. Okay? So here's some problems with this. If you redeem the saved only, it's not unlimited. There's that. Okay? So there's that one. There's another one. Create man to permit the fall. 3, elect some, leave the others. Apply salvation to the elect. And do the Holy Spirit. So that also has limited atonement. You guys seen tulip? You heard of that acrostic? Okay. Do you need all this? Tulip. Okay, Okay, so the T stands for total depravity, which is a result of that. Okay? The U stands for unconditional election. That means there are no conditions for the election. That means that God decides who's elect and who's not, and makes no difference how your free will turns. That's what unconditional election is here. Okay?
Debbie, can you say that again?
It makes, in this viewpoint, this is straight up Calvinism, okay? In this viewpoint, unconditional election means that God makes his choice as to who is going to be elected, and there are no conditions on our part to be met. Not faith, not rejection, not anything. He just straight up decides. And the verse that is one of the primary verses is Jacob I've chosen, Esau I've hated, and Jacob I've chosen. And this was before they did anything right or wrong or anything. And that's in Romans 9. I'm not sure that that should be applied to this, but that's what is. The next one is limited atonement. Where Jesus Christ pays for the sins of the elect only. That's what that means. When he's on the cross, only the ones who were chosen had their sins paid for. Okay? And then the fourth one is irresistible grace. Is it Ibel or Abel? Abel. Ibel? That means when this person who's been chosen hears about this, they can't resist. They believe because they can't resist. And then this one is the perseverance of the saints. What's that? I may have spelled that wrong. Which means God keeps them safe. Okay? So I see lots of problems with that. But that is Reformed theology. That is the basic idea of that. Just thought I'd tell you some of the different struggles that humans have gone through trying to figure out how did God do his stuff? How did he make his decisions? How does it come out fair? And in the end, we really do have free will, or we can't be held responsible for our decisions. And God really is good and fair and just. And God really does love. And Jesus really did pay for the sins of the world. So, put it together in your heads. Okay? All right. I have a couple other things and then I'm going to be done. There's different ways that they describe how does God deal with sin now. Just in life, there's, where am I at here? I've lost, he has sometimes where his providence, his decision is completely preventative. He stops someone from sinning. He does such a thing to stop it. There's a story, like Abraham and Sarah, when they went down to Egypt and Abraham claims that Sarah's his sister because he's afraid that, they'll kill him to take her. And so she's taken into the king's harem. And yet he doesn't touch her. And he finds out later that they're husband and wife. And God says, I prevented you from touching her. That's an example of preventative providence. There's another one, there's permissive providence. That's really simple. God permits the sin to happen. There's directive providence. That's when God lets the sin happen, but he directs how it will turn out. So that is a good example, as Jesus speaks to Judas. You go do it, but you go do it right now and you go do it quickly. That was the illustration. You go rebel, you go turn me in. You're gonna do it right now, and you go do it quickly. So that's directive. Then there's restrictive, where he lets it happen, and then, but restricts its negative results. Do I have that one? I might have that one. Job. Job is the example. He lets it happen, but he restricts the negative results. He also has all kinds of evidence when he takes the sin and turns it to good. And a perfect illustration of that is Joseph. You know, at the end of his life, or at the end, when his dad has finally died, and the son and his brothers, who are all older than him except for the one, are looking at him, and he's now the king, or next to the king with all the authority, and they go, all right, now revenge is going to happen. And Joseph says, no, as for you, you meant it for evil against me, but God meant it for good. That's Genesis 50:20. And so God turned it for good, to bring about the deliverance of many people and preserve many people alive, which is what happened. So there's that. My pages are messed up because I jumped all over this. There's a few things that God can do to us personally. He can guide us. He uses His Word primarily for that. He teaches us, He instructs us. He has the inner leading of the Holy Spirit. He has made room, and here's another one that I asked God. He has made room to answer our prayers. So, by definition, He has planned out every single event. Every single event. From in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, till come, Lord Jesus, come. Every single event. And yet, in the middle of this, He has made room for us to pray. And there are things that happen because people pray, and things that could have happened that don't happen because people don't pray. That's an interesting thing. So how does R fit into God's plan? So add that to your questions on sovereignty. Sovereignty is a rough topic. There are external things that help you out to let you know how God wants to lead you. He opens doors, He closes doors. I had an opportunity one time to have this, what I thought was this great ministry, and I kept checking it out, and I kept checking it out, and every single time it's, later, let me talk to you later, or no, you can't do that, or and I finally realized that God slammed a huge door, and within about 3 weeks, a huge other one opened, and I all of a sudden had more ministry than I could accomplish. And so God shuts doors and opens doors, and then afterwards, when you get away from the emotion of it, you are very grateful for what He has done, because He has His guidance on that. So my questions were ones I've already presented to you. It says this little thing, some questions. Why did God permit sin? Why did He give us free will? How do prayers really affect the sovereign decisions of God if they're already made? Those are my questions. I have to just say those. Why did God permit sin? Why does God even permit evil to enter the universe? Why didn't He just say, Satan, stay out? You know? Why? Let's see, what else? Prayers. How does that fit in? Would have saved him a lot of heartache himself if he hadn't had to have his son die. Yeah.
It's hard for me to understand that we have free will, and yet God already foreordained that we would be saved. And I'm not complaining about salvation. I just wonder how that works.
Join the club. That's what I'm trying to say. I just do not. He already knows which ones of us are going to believe and which ones aren't. And yet we're held responsible, or like a fire's not fair, and God's fair. I don't know.
I really struggled for years about Pharaoh. I thought, well, what chance did he have? I couldn't understand it for so long, but that speaks exactly to that. And God already knew that his heart, yes.
Yeah,
And he proved himself over and over again how he would do. And so God, left him then to
right.
the desires of his free
There's
will.
several things like that. There's a time when God, it says, actual words, that God moved David to number the people and then disciplines him for numbering the people. I go, all right, wait a minute here. So that one I have no answer for that one. I have never included that story in a children's lesson, just because there's no story. I don't have the answer for it. Yeah, so there's things like that. So I just don't know. I think I'm getting a big list that I'm going to take to heaven with me to ask God about, because I don't know.
Well, I think sometimes our free will causes us pain,
Uh-huh,
and God knows we're going to make that decision, but we could have made another decision
uh-huh,
that might not have caused us that pain, but He gave us the choice.
right.
The one we chose was
Well, shoot, every time we sin, it causes us pain.
right.
And yet we
But
still
I mean-
do it all the time.
Right.
Yeah,
But our free will sometimes costs us that we wouldn't have had to pay that price.
right. So for your homework, there is a whole aspect of sovereignty that I left out. And it's mixed up in those verses. They're not in any kind of order. They're just sort of jumbled up there. I go, oh yeah, there's another one. Oh yeah, there's another one. So I just sort of pile them up there. So you will enjoy figuring out that last part of sovereignty that is in there. Dear Father in heaven, I thank you for being sovereign. I thank you that you have, in your sovereignty, given us our free will. I thank you that we are held responsible, otherwise we would be irresponsible people. I thank you that because of this story, we have the opportunity of seeing your love at a much, tremendously deeper level than probably we could have ever seen it before. I thank you that you sent Jesus Christ. I think that you planned out this and that you provided a way just to save me. I thank you for that. Nothing in me deserved that. And I thank you that you are who you are and that you rule, that you are Lord God Almighty. In Jesus' name, amen.